So for all of you, I don't know if anyone has not been here before, but nonetheless, just briefly, warm welcome. My name is even wrong. Let me adjust that. My name is Moritz Schild, and I'm one of the founding members and the board member of Hanseatic Blockchain Institute, a association in Hamburg that has two aims. First of all, we want to help connect the blockchain community within Hamburg and in the exterior, and that's ranging to Munich, of course. And then secondly, we want to educate about blockchain. We want to learn and to spread the word of the potential of blockchain. And I think that's one of the intentions of our association that fits pretty well in what you, Rebecca, consider as one of your tasks in life, to really discover what new technique is able to do and how we can use a combination of these recent and latest developments to make well, the world a better place, or maybe an easier to handle place, maybe both simultaneously. So let's see. I think the weather is so good outside that a few of us prefer sitting in the beer garden. Nonetheless, I'm honored and very happy that we were able to get you, Rebecca, give us some ideas of what you are working on with Datarella. We already had people from Datarella, and it's quite impressive what you're doing in terms of AI, but as well related to blockchain. And we are going to talk about one topic which I believe is amongst the kind of top 5 application areas for blockchain and for everything that is related to smart cities and the future of our day-to-day lives, which is the future of mobility. And Datarella has a project on that called MOBIX, and that stands for Datarella's Micromobility Marketplace solution. And I think that's all I wanted to just briefly mention, to welcome you all, welcome you, Rebecca. And with that, I would like to hand over to you. And before you start, maybe you just let us briefly know what was your first contact with blockchain or cryptocurrencies, and what was the main reason that you decided to continue digging into that space?
That is a really good question. I guess my first contact with blockchain was sometime after the Satoshi white paper came out. People started talking about Bitcoin.
All right.
And it wasn't until maybe, I don't know, 2015 or so that I really got actively involved, and I just bought a little bit of small currency of Bitcoin and started fooling around with actually the underlying technology. So my background is in business and economics originally, but I've always worked for larger tech firms, with Apple and with Fujitsu, and just wanted to, I think, as personally dive deeper and deeper down sort of the tech rabbit hole, so to say, and level up my tech skills and development skills at that point. And so, yeah, bought a little bit of Bitcoin and a little bit of Ether, and started fooling around with smart contracts and teaching myself how to program. And one thing led to another, and over a number of years became a self-taught engineer. And since the last 4 years now, I've been working as a blockchain architect for Datarella, and doing full-time requirements engineering and project management for building all sorts of blockchain-based systems. We're a industrial provider of blockchain solutions.
Yep.
And we're exclusively engaged in working on distributed ledger technologies and decentralized technologies. And it's really exciting work because I get to spend all day, every day working on really, really interesting, really groundbreaking, crazy stuff. So everything from you know, mesh networks and IoT to crazy new blockchains. It's all there every day.
Pretty cool. So, and how did the mobility theme, was it something that you introduced to Datarella, or was someone within Datarella or a client of Datarella saying, we want to apply a blockchain to mobility, and so can you do it, or how did that project came up?
Well, that's a really good question as well. I think the impetus comes out of the fact that we've worked in the mobility sector for a long time. Like, we have a lot of larger corporate clients who are engaged in that sector. And actually, we did way back in, I want to say 2018, a large hackathon with a bunch of corporate sponsorship, where I did the project management for actually setting up this big, we called it the blockchain mobility hackathon. And there we had, I think, over 100 people that came and hacked at that point. And you know, telecom and VW and Bosch and lots of larger players, names that you know. Telefonica was there. Lots and lots of those larger names were at that hackathon. BMW was there, and those folks. That was sort of, for us, the impetus. We had this vision that you should have an ability to have a multimodal, seamless transportation experience, mobility experience. So that would range from, you know, getting your car to doing your parking to, you know, jumping on your scooter to doing all of the things that you need to do within the mobility ecosystem, all in one. One protocol, let's say. And back then, that was really new, and just the very idea was something that, for us, in a way, the hackathon was a way to get understanding at the corporate level and also at the community level of this larger vision. And since then, we've constantly been working on different types of mobility projects. Datarella is active in many other areas, in the humanitarian sector, in the real estate sector. We've got a lot of irons in the fire, so to say. But mobility has always been one of our core areas that we're focused on, where we're providing different types of products and services. What I would say is that now the technology, the underlying technology, has come along far enough that it's feasible to start realizing that actual vision. When we did that hackathon, I guess that's now three years ago, you could build individual portions of it. But now we're in the position with some of the new consensus mechanisms that have come along, and the advent of the Cosmos SDK, and a lot of those sorts of innovations that have come along in the wider blockchain sector. We've come into a position where we think it's the right time to actually bring that to the street, so to say, and to actually be able to demonstrate that technology actually with cars and physical infrastructure assets, and actually also to bring that out to the community in terms of incentivization, to both to participate in that system, but also to pass along the word, and and to just keep growing that ecosystem.
Show us how it works, and please, everybody, feel free to ask questions or to give your remarks in the chat or using the Q&A function.
So I'm going to throw up a quick presentation here. You guys should be able to see my screen now, right?
Yeah.
All right. So quick quiz for everybody. What makes a system with, and we're talking about a mobility and micromobility ecosystem here, work with millions of participants, and what would make it sustainable over time? So here's your answers. Is it the architecture? Is it the laws and the regulations and the structures? Or is it the incentivization?
Got it.
So what do you think? What's your guess?
So for me, it's incentivization.
All right, ding, ding, ding. We've got a winner. That might be a bit obvious, but it's important. The MOBIX ecosystem is really based all around incentivization. So there's a lot of tokens out there, a lot of people doing a lot of different stuff with tokenization. But most of it's in, let's say, in the DeFi world. It doesn't have any connection to the real world. And with MOBIX, we want to change that, and we want to change it specifically within the micromobility ecosystem. So the goal that we're chasing there is improving urban life by incentivizing people to use micromobility solutions, and also to not use things that would be more detrimental to life in urban areas. So that means providing dynamic incentives for behavior that is better for the overall urban environment, which means, for instance, driving less. It means making those smaller trips using micromobility instead of just hopping in your car. And it also means when and where available, also either optimizing your parking behavior so that you're parking in places when and where there's space, as opposed to running around in circles looking for parking. So there's a whole bunch of aspects there, but I'm going to skip a couple of slides here forward to give you guys a couple of sort of a look at what it is that we're building here. It's more than just incentivization. We're building together with fetch.ai, that's the technology on top of which we're building MOBIX. We're building a system that allows you to do all sorts of different things within that micromobility ecosystem, based on a bunch of really interesting and cutting edge technology. So if you guys don't already know fetch.ai is a really, really interesting blockchain that combines artificial intelligence with DLT technology. So you have this concept of these things called autonomous economic agents. And those agents can act on your behalf, or they're on their own behalf in economic transactions. So they have their own private keys, and they're able to act on their own logic to meet whatever ends it is that they have programmed in. They have normally those are fairly simple things, like pursuing a simple goal. They're called skills within Fetch. But the power of that is that it allows you to sort of offload things that would be difficult for a human or annoying for a human, and sort of, you can think of it a little bit like your little AI butler for the annoying tasks that you don't even want to read the fine print on. Okay. And also on the business level and on the infrastructure level, those little bots are working to actually provide the services that you need in the background. So your AEA is working with other AEAs to get the things that you need in a privacy preserving manner. So the issue that we have right now with a lot of the mobility offers that you actually have in the market, and for that matter, pretty much everything that you're doing online, is that it's all being tracked. At some point, way back in the day, we made this this terrible bargain where we said, hey, we want all these free services and we want all this this great AI-based interaction, and we're willing to give up our data for it. And we see now that that's actually a really bad bargain, because if you look at things like Cambridge Analytica, the kinds of things that are happening there, there's those data lakes and that concentration of data are putting power in the wrong places, enabling manipulation and subversion of all sorts of things that we hold dear, like democracy. And also just, like I said, it's all about incentives. So there's some pretty perverse incentives going on in the system. And there's definitely an incentive to bunker as much data as you can get your hands on as a large company. And those companies may or may not keep that data safe for you. I think you've all probably seen and maybe been affected by, in various ways, data breaches. And the thing that's important to note here about the MOBIX ecosystem is that we're basing all of our authentication and all of the communication between the autonomous economic agents on self-sovereign identity. So what that means is it's basically let's say the missing identity protocol in the internet. The internet was never built for verifying or switching identities electronically. There wasn't an identity layer that was built in, that's sort of how we got into this mess in the first place as far as identity goes. And in the future, we're going to be dealing with your identity as a person. We'll be dealing with, and already today you're dealing hundreds of times a day with various different types of technical systems, and that's going to get exponentially more and more. As for instance, when we start moving towards autonomous vehicles, those vehicles are collecting more and more data all the time, and they're interacting with hundreds of IoT or thousands of IoT devices at a time, or not at a time, but on a daily basis as you travel through the street, and you may not even know it. So we're looking to change that paradigm by putting control over that identity data back in the hands of the user. So you have a map, you have an app, the MOBIX app, and in that app you have sole control over your identity information, and you also have a private autonomous economic agent, which is able to create connections on your behalf to service providers, mobility infrastructure service providers, and also will go behind you. We call it a privacy preserving autonomous economic agent. It will go behind you when you exit a parking garage or you sign off of the scooter. It will go behind you and it will kill that connection in such a way that the service provider can't spam you ever again, and can't track you. And what we're seeing is we're moving as a society in that direction, because we're starting to see these negative externalities regarding data centralization become overwhelmingly negative, also at the political level. So you're starting to see things like, Apple recently moved to have individual do not track lists. We're starting to see Google going towards killing cookies. And that's mostly, that's a complex issue, but it's also being driven by governments, including GDPR. So we're looking to have a much better way to do that, and to permeate that through through the mobility ecosystem. All of this, like I said, it's based on fetch.ai technology. At its core, we're deploying on the MOBIX tokens going to be on the fetch.ai blockchain, which is a Cosmos SDK based blockchain, and has a mainnet already up and running. I'm hoping many of you already have some fetch squirreled away, because there's also upcoming, one of the things that you should be aware about and excited about is that there will be an upcoming stake drop. I believe that the date of that is July 15th, coming up. So we're really near term. I've got to check the website to make sure, but that's coming, and that will basically precede wallets of people who have also fetch with MOBIX, and then that MOBIX you will be able to then use for booking, finding, and paying for micromobility services, and also parking services. So one of the things that we're also doing there is decentralized parking. So and that will actually be physically bringing onto the streets. We're planning at the International Automobile Association Fair in September to have already a demonstrator up and running, where you'll be able to use a MOBIX app to book deep parking. We call it deep parking. It's essentially dynamically priced parking. There's this huge problem in cities where you're just like rolling around searching for parking for most of the time that most of the traffic actually within cities is people looking for parking. So we can use the search and discovery mechanism of the simple open economic framework of fetch.ai to identify which parking lots have the right capacity, and also to incentivize to use the MOBIX token to incentivize people to park in parking lots that are less full, or parking lots, or also to keep places free for people who are really willing to pay a higher price. So you can imagine in the flight space, there's been price differentiation for years and years and years, but in the parking space, we don't see that. And so one of the other things that MOBIX does is allows for differentiation in pricing of parking, and a much better information landscape for actually going ahead and finding that parking. And like I said, all of that based on decentralized technology. So it's not, you know, there's plenty of apps out there that allow you to do some of the search and discovery mechanisms, and even some multimodal search and discovery mechanisms, but they're not allowing you to do that in a way that's permissionless, and it's fair for all of the participants within the system. And it's
okay.
So you have sort of these.
All in all, what means of transport are will play a role in your vision of future micromobility?
In the future, basically everything. In the near term, though, like I said, we're talking about electromobility for autos, specifically the parking element, and then also connecting that into micromobility, and that means bikes, it means scooters, all of those sorts of things. So we're planning to actually have we have a partnership with a dockable scooter company, and we're actually going to be fielding a small fleet of scooters, so that you can go ahead and actually use the tokens that you have for the micromobility services in the city. And like I said, that's coming up in September.
Okay,
it's going to be the first demonstrations of those systems. And we're actively interested in looking for people who want to take part. So there's a number of things that you can do if you're excited about micromobility, and if you're excited about privacy preserving technologies, and you actually want to see blockchain in the real world, let's say. So what you can do, the first thing that you can do is, if you're staking on the Fetch blockchain, you'll be eligible for that stake drop when it happens. And you can also get involved with the community on our Telegram groups, and also then just follow the MOBIX website when those demonstrations happen in mid-September. Then you might even be able to actually physically check the stuff out and start using the system, hopefully. But we'll keep everybody updated as far as when the wallet is going to be actually out there in the street and available for booking your next ride.
But I mean, in the first instance, it's going to be an app, and then it's going to be a token that can be used in order to pay mobility services, and that's it. But how do you create a community, and how does the incentivization scheme work?
So it's sort of the other way around, actually. There's going to be a token that's going to be stake dropped, and that app is where you hold your token. And beyond that, though, we've got a bunch of technology actually working in the background. So we already have, together with fetch.ai, demonstrated the technology necessary for doing this dynamic parking and incentivization in parking. So we have these, we call them IoT nodes. It's basically a Raspberry Pi with a network connection and self-contained power systems and all of the things that you need in order to run an autonomous economic agent. And way back in October, November, December time range last year, we actually demonstrated that system, or that component of the system. That's sort of the infrastructure side of the system within our M-Zone field test with fetch.ai. So what that involved, and we're going to build on top of that during the next few months, leading up to the International Automobile Association fair here in Munich. Those are that's actually the hardware that's in the garages and in the scooter hubs, and that's where you're actually communicating with. When you use that app, you're communicating directly with the parking garage, and that computer in that parking garage is actually running its own logic and taking its own transactions on behalf of its owner, just like your autonomous economic agent in your car is making transactions on your behalf. And we'll see. I can't promise exactly right now, but the goal in our roadmap is that during the IAA in September, we should also have actually integration within a car for the autonomous economic agent of the user. So what you can imagine is that you have your autonomous economic agent in your car, and your MOBIX wallet is able to okay transactions on your behalf for instance, parking, and then once you get where you're going, for that last mile approach directly with the scooters as well. So those, we'll have to see how fast everything comes. But what you can imagine is that this wallet is actually sort of like your passport, let's say, into interacting with the mobility assets in the ecosystem around you, much like you would interact with something with a project in the DeFi space in some ways, except you're interacting then with actual assets in the world.
Sorry, Rebecca, there's one technical question just asking which chain technology your system is running on.
Fetch.ai is the blockchain where we're going to be deploying, and that is a Cosmos SDK based system. So it's compatible with the Cosmos blockchain communication layer, and yeah, it's great because it's really fast, and the transaction fees are nothing like what you would imagine on Bitcoin or Ethereum, someplace where you're having to pay a lot of fees. So it's fractions of a cent to transact, to do your searches, to do your payments. All of that stuff is really quick.
Let's look into the future. If you look at the current network of a scooter provider, for example, they all have and use their own apps for clients, and I think they have a reason to do so.
Correct.
What's your value proposition towards these people that have a bunch of machines sitting there, and why would they want to use your way for users to use it instead of their old ones?
Super good question. The thing is that basically scooter, like I said, it all comes back to incentives. Scooter and bike sharing companies have an incentive to, very much like a Google or a Facebook, to rat hole data, and not just data but also users. So they have a fairly high cost of acquisition for getting new users and keeping them, and that's why you see this proliferation of one app, this model, one app for one scooter, which we think is kind of insane. That you have on your phone. I don't know how many apps you guys have, but I have like 150 or some ridiculous amount, and even just the micromobility apps, like I've got Scooter, I've got Tier, I've got Lime, I've got Bird. That's just 4 or 5 that I can name off the top of my head, but I think I've probably got 10 different micromobility apps there, and the thing is that they're competing in sort of this old model where you acquire users and then you hold on to those users and you get as much as you can out of those users. And the scooter market up until now, and the micromobility market up until now, has been pretty undifferentiated in a lot of ways. Like one scooter is the same as the next, and pretty much the pricing is the same all the way across the market. It's really standard that it's 10 or 20 cents a minute. Sometimes you've got some special offers, for first users. I don't know if you've noticed that, but a lot of times there's like tags hanging on your micromobility scooters. That is not a very efficient way of actually targeting users. So there's sort of hyper competition in that space, and they're really trying to hold on to their users. So what you're going to see actually within the MOBIX app, and I think that's really important and really interesting, is access and incentivization for not only using MOBIX scooters, but for using all those other scooters. So there will be a search and discovery mechanism based on the simple open economic framework from Fetch, which will allow you to search for all of the scooters in your area and locate all of the scooters regardless of what brand that's coming from. And when you go ahead and click through to those specific scooters, if you're clicking through, let's say, to a Lime scooter, right? that Lime scooter, you'll just get a deep link straight to your either the Lime app if you already have it, or to install it. Because obviously at this point we can't just mandate that they integrate with our systems. But what we can do is provide incentives for you clicking through as a user on that link, and actually engaging with the overall micromobility ecosystem. And of course, you get more incentives if you're more MOBIX tokens if you're interacting directly with a MOBIX scooter. Then you've got all sorts of bonuses. You're able to book and pay directly with the MOBIX tokens, and you also get paid for those things. So also within,
but you mean there will be MOBIX scooters, so you will
yes.
be competing not only on the layer or on the level of getting access to it, but as well on the street.
Yeah, but we're not. That I should make clear. MOBIX is not. MOBIX isn't Lime. MOBIX isn't out here to fundamentally make money through scooter services. It's more like those scooters are a lever to press the incumbents and the different micromobility offerings in that sector to move in the direction of open co-opetition on a shared fair basis, and stop this sort of rat holing of information and rat holing of users, and have just a different paradigm as far as mobility goes, to move away from this paradigm where one app, one scooter, or one
a little bit apart from blockchain. So as part of your vision, these scooters are a relevant part in the future of micromobility, or what do you think? Even in the countryside, people will use a scooter too, or is it only in larger cities?
No, the scooters not in the countryside, but definitely different types of mobility. So, for instance, in the countryside, parking is less of a problem out there. But the moment that you come into the city, you're gonna need all of those services. So it's really about urban areas. It's not so much about the countryside at all. But anybody coming from outside the city as well is going to have to interact with all of those systems. And it's much easier if you have an open framework for interacting with those systems than having to enter your credit card information 25 different times and somebody sucking up your data every single time. Yeah.
But so eventually, how is MOBIX or Datarella intending to get money out of it? Is it commission from whom?
You're talking about like sort of what's the business?
What's the
commercial
model? What's the commercial viewpoint on that?
So there's a number of places where the business model for us is possible, but some of that comes out of smart contract fees. So you imagine like if anybody who's familiar with Uniswap or with any of the DeFi platforms, the contracts where those tokens are actually flowing through in big successful projects, they have a small fee. And last I heard, I think Uniswap was generating 100,000 US dollars per day through the fees. And as a user, you don't even hardly notice that, because at that point you're paying so much gas within Ethereum that it's a tiny component. But here, your transaction fees are a fraction of a cent anyway, because it's a totally different blockchain. But it's about volume. It's really about like about generating lots and lots of volume of transactions and really changing the market and disrupting the market. that's how we're going to be successful there. Because, you know, I mean, one or two or three or four or 100 users is not enough. It's got to be you know, entire cities.
All right. Okay.
Yeah.
So another question that, which relates to the tokenomics of the MOBIX, asking how is the token supply of the MOBIX token managed after the initial stake drop? Has it a fixed cap? And I mean, that goes with the question: will there be a burning mechanism or a generation mechanism? Is that already in place?
So that's coming. It's not yet announced. And I can't give specifics on it, but what you will see is that if you go to MOBIX.ai, there's a section on the MOBIX token, and that section, as soon as that information is available, there will be then those informations available for the stake drop. But for people who are knowledgeable about the fetch ecosystem, you can imagine it very, very much in the lines of the Atomics or the MetalX stake drops that have already happened there. So it's sort of, we're very, very close to the fetch team. And they've sort of written a pretty successful playbook in a way of sort of expanding the use cases for fetch AI based applications to other areas. So for instance, a good example is with Atomics making asset heavy or investment heavy assets, investment light assets through the use of DeFi in their case. And we're doing that essentially with MOBIX. Not that specific thing, but in the mobility sector, I mean. So sort of expanding the applications of these autonomous economic agents, because, you know, like the guys at Fetch are really, really smart and have they're really amazing AI brains. But sometimes it's a little bit hard to get your hands on what that actually means. And what does that mean for the user? Like what's the real benefit of it? And when you put that that app in the hands of the user and you put them on the street and you say, okay, when you park here, this parking spot costs more, this parking spot costs less, or you get incentives for parking in this parking spot and you get less incentives for parking in this parking spot, people understand that. And the same thing goes for the scooters. When you've got an app that says, okay, we're setting up your pairwise pseudo-anonymous connection, won't be in those words, but that's what it is. The user knows, hey, this is a private connection, and I've set that private connection up with this company, and my agent has also killed that connection later. I've got essentially proof that connection is done, and I'm not going to get sucked up in an information dragnet.
And
does that make sense?
I'm still struggling a little bit with the idea to have privacy. On the other hand, to using someone like MOBIX as an app provider who's essentially in the old world, you've been kind of super intermediary for a super platform for intermediating services, which usually are the ones we want to get rid of. And the question is, so currently this is dominated by Tier and Lime because they are the platforms. And what is needed to get to a world where we, in the meaning of the white paper, really permit a peer-to-peer transaction where I just stay in front of a car sharing or a shareable car, and I don't have someone who's seeing my transactions and operating my transaction. And I think there's a few more steps that are not only technical.
This is a really, really, really good point, because there's a number of things that are happening there that, or a number of steps along the way that need to happen before we get to that idealized vision. So in that idealized vision, we all interact via a protocol, and that protocol, much like Ethereum or Bitcoin, resolves and enforces the transactions automatically, right? But you have to have integration with the real world. Like, that's kind of the problem that we have. We have this big chicken or the egg problem. That and you see that all over in the mobility sector, that nobody wants to share any data with one another. Everybody wants to lock up their data behind walls, and they don't necessarily even want to do it if it's in a federated machine learning context. That stuff's all just beginning to really get traction. But what we're looking at, and what our approach to that is that via these incentives mechanisms, if we're able to generate that demand on the user side to generate pull, then we can pull those legacy actors into a protocol-based system based on user demand, because the companies will follow the users wherever they go.
All right.
And that is sort of the approach to bootstrapping and to getting rid of that chicken and the egg problem, because you have to have. I think in many of our listeners perhaps are German. In German, there's this wonderful saying, "Die riechen das Braten." Die riechen das Braten.
Die riechen den Braten.
Die riechen den Braten, genau.
Okay.
So like when the mobility providers, the legacy legacy platforms realize that that's where the money is, or that's where the money is going to be in the future. And that's where the direction of the overall, also the political pressures are going, is towards privacy preserving infrastructure. And that's also where the users are starting to go. Then you'll start to see sort of cascading change through the market. And it's important to note here, I think there's something maybe a little bit inaccurate about, Moritz, about your description that you said. You said that we were an intermediary. We're not. So the MOBIX app is no more an intermediary than, for instance, a Uniswap. So you can, other people can take all of the technology that we're producing. It's all open source. Anybody else can take that technology, clone it, upgrade it. I mean, and that's exactly what we've seen in the DeFi space, is that somebody came up with a good idea and bootstrapped it and got it off the ground in the first place. And then, a million other people came along and copied that same protocol and iterated on it. And that's what we want to see. We want to see that kind of iteration that we saw in DeFi happening in terms of real world mobility.
There's one more question in the chat. However, before we get to it, maybe we have been talking about car sharing and parking and scooters and so on, that currently public transport is still a pretty relevant part of it. Do you intend to have public transport, trains and so on, somehow integrated in your vision, or is it separated from that?
At this point, it's separated, just because of a feasibility standpoint, let's say.
Yeah.
Mostly because we've discovered that it's much easier and faster to work with private companies than it is to work with large public organizations. So we can iterate faster and make those connections faster with private organizations. So like I said, we're starting off in the micromobility and the parking space because we have good connections also to real estate. There's a second firm which Datarella owns shares in the Rai Real Estate GmbH. And there we have our partners Hammer AG and Wertgrün Immobilien, two of the largest commercial and residential real estate funds and developers, respectively. So we have good connections already in those sectors, which allows us then to sort of have the expertise and also have the connections to pull off a micromobility play within the public transport sector. Just our connections are less strong, so it's natural for us to start in a place where we're faster, let's say.
Okay, but having good connections, does that mean that you don't need marketing, which leads us to the question, how do you want to create the demand? You probably need a huge marketing budget and campaigns to pull it off. Do you at MOBIX plan to spend on campaigns and such?
Not in the traditional sense that you're thinking about, like not in the sense of like we're not a venture capital funded behemoth that's gonna go out there and buy giant billboards and pull down those sorts of things. But really, at the end of the day, it's all about community. It's also all about the value of the token. So as the token value goes up, that's essentially what's happened here throughout the blockchain ecosystem. Is the projects have been bootstrapped by the appreciation in token values, and there's no ICO or anything like that, but just a stake drop. So people who are already invested in the ecosystem will get that token at day one, and then there's plans for listings, and there's plans for of course all of the DeFi stuff is possible immediately from day one, liquidity pools and stuff like that, and that then drives the incentives mechanisms. So those incentives mechanisms are designed to be self-reinforcing once that machine starts moving forward.
But I mean, if it's going to a token that's hopefully going to appreciate in value, then it wouldn't make sense for me to use my MOBIX token to pay for the ride.
If it were a Bitcoin, but it's not a Bitcoin. So there's a big difference between like it's not a token that's designed to with some deflationary mechanism to appreciate for all of time, because it also has to be used as a means of transaction. Yeah. So that's why we don't see Bitcoin as a means of payment, because the deflationary mechanisms built into the protocol are so strong that it's intended as a store of value and nothing else. You're kind of a fool if you're buying your Tesla with Bitcoins. That's not the case though with the tokenomics from MOBIX.
All right.
Yeah.
So everybody, any further questions to Rebecca on micromobility and on the vision of using one single app? I think that's a relevant part of it. Or would you be open to have other people copycat the app and
yeah, definitely copycat. So it's open source. So once it's out there, you're going to be able to copycat the app and iterate on that. It's an open protocol. So it's not about routing everything through just our app, but you got to start somewhere. If nobody builds an interface for if nobody builds an interface, then you can't interact with the thing, and nobody gets it. So somebody's got to act first, and in this case, we're the first actor. So we're putting our money where our mouth is, and building, and then you all will get to interact. So what like I said, what you can do already right now is get involved with our Telegram. There's also a MOBIX Messenger program. So people who, and you can check that out on the MOBIX.ai website. People who are interested in micromobility and in the future of urban transport, and maybe have some interesting skills, would be willing to act as community moderators, or are good with graphics. There's a lot of people out there doing really interesting communications work in the community. Those people, there's a program for engaging with the community, and then also earning MOBIX tokens through those activities, which then you can
kind of a bounty ambassador program or
something like that. Yeah, exactly.
So how many people within Datarella are working on the MOBIX project, to give us?
So we've got within our subsidiary in Gdansk approximately 30 developers. Here in Munich, we're 6, and we've got another 5 or 6 in North Macedonia as well. So, and then that's also in addition to the team at Fetch is also engaged. And we've got a couple more partners coming.
And all this is entirely financed and provided by Datarella, not with the direct idea of generating returns or selling that to someone else, but with the vision of being part of something that's going to be huge. And then, so how is that going to pay back the investment that is made?
Well, like I said, it's about scale. Uniswap's not the only decentralized exchange out there, but they're making 1,000 times their returns because of the scale that's been attained. So that they were the first ones that managed to get this ball rolling, so to say. And once the ball's rolling,
we don't care about returns.
Then you do
don't
care
need
about
to care where the returns come from.
Exactly. Like you do care about returns, and we do care about returns, but it's not nearly as interesting to just make a bunch of money, for instance, by selling the company or something, as it is to really actually make a change in the system. And we at Datarella are really passionate about getting blockchain on the street. I mean, since already back in 2016, we were probably the most famous thing that we've built so far is the blockchain-based transaction system that we run for the World Food Program. So even way back then, we were really interested in finding ways to get practical applications of blockchain to scale. In that case, that system we've been running and maintaining for the World Food Program since then. So there's about 1 million refugees in Jordan and Bangladesh that use that system to basically, it backends all the transactions in all the World Food Program supermarkets in Jordan and in Bangladesh. So it's things like that where we want to get to scale. Once you get to those kinds of scales, then the returns come, and and the impact is the more interesting thing in any way. Like, you know, I mean, we're not When Moon or Lambo kind of people. Like, we're interested in actually seeing the potential of blockchain realized at the scale that, you know, a normal person on the street will understand, because there's a limited amount of people who are going to want to be involved or really understand the mechanisms behind these systems, when this stuff's really going to have traction and when the magic's really going to flow is at the point where it just is magic. You know, it's just something that you use and you assume, oh yeah, of course I got my incentives today for how I parked, or oh, of course the parking had I was able to park at the, you know, the Ministry of Information, let's say, because they have dynamic parking after 6 p.m. You know, like, of course that's possible. Obviously, it's not possible now, but we'll know that we have success on this when those things for normal people advance into the background, and you don't necessarily, as an individual in you know, just using normal micromobility or mobility services in your city, you don't think, hey, this is all blockchain. Rather, blockchain is normal. Like,
sure. Yeah. Absolutely. So. It appears that there are no further questions, and we have reached the deadline of 8 p.m.
All right.
I have to say thank you very much. It was enlightening to hear about your project, and I pretty much like people that have this kind of point of view, that are not into Lambo but into helping technology become better and make our world a better place somehow. Everybody who has attended, thank you very much for being with us tonight, and very much looking forward to next week, where we will discuss how blockchain serves in infrastructure and can be used to make systems better secure against cybersecurity. So blockchain as a means to secure against cybersecurity. Don't know what it's going to be about, but really curious to. So I'll be there next week. Wishing you all a very nice Monday evening, and enjoy the weather, and stay healthy. Tschüss, Rebecca.
Have a great one.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Tschüss.